In this video, I want to talk about the tenant application and application process. So my mentor taught me something years ago, and he said, Mark, when a tenant applies, their application tells the story. It's your responsibility to read that application and discover the story that they're telling. So when a person applies, we're not just taking face value and saying, okay, well, this is what they're telling me and everything looks good. We got to look a little bit deeper. So I'm going to give you an example. An application came in this week. It came in on one of our nicest rental properties. And, at first things looked kind of good. And as we continue looking a little bit deeper, these questions start to arise. So I want to kind of cast that picture of what happened. So my assistant calls me just the other day and says, hey, I've got this app, a person wants to apply for our new rental property. And by the way, we're not even done with it. So we still have to stay in the deck, do landscaping, do just a little bit of painting in the basement. So we already have people applying before we're done. That's a great problem to have. But so this person applies. First of all, their kid goes to the school that's almost directly behind the property. So that's probably why they're applying. So kind of look at that. And then, so things we're kind of looking at is, what's their tenant history? What's their job history look like? How long have they been at their present job? What's their income, felony record? All those pieces factored in. So it came in, credit score was not that great. Credit score was, I think, about mid to mid high 500s. So we don't necessarily expect a perfect credit score because generally if somebody's renting, they're not going to have perfect credit. But we do have a fair amount of tenants that apply that do have great credit. So we also can't assume that every tenant that's going to apply is going to have terrible credit, because that's not the case. But we do look at that. And when we're looking at the credit, I'm not really worried about the credit score because I understand that can go up and down. But what I'm looking at is, their debt. How responsible have they been? Have they just recently purchased a new car? Have they been applying for houses recently? If so, that probably means they're not going to be staying in our house very long because they're going to be looking for something to buy. Do they have a lot of student debt? Do they have an occupation that they went to school for? So I'm kind of like looking at all those things, right? When it comes to the credit score. In this case, she had a fair amount of student debt and didn't really have much other debt aside from that. But also in this case, she had applied for to buy a house several times. I'm looking at that and saying, okay, again, she may not be staying here very long. She's hunting for a house. We need to consider that, right? We don't want somebody that's going to be in the house for a year. We want tenants that are minimum 2 years, ideally 3 to 5 years. Makes a massive difference on profitability of having rentals when you have long-term tenants. We have that to consider. And then, her income was great. Her income was, definitely covered. We usually look for about an income of 4 times rent. So income, I think she was bringing in, I think it was like $7,000. And so she had a cleaning business, right? So she had a cleaning business that she brought money in from. And then come to find out after, listening to everything, she also had a job, but she'd only been there for a month, right? So that tells me there's some instability, great that she has a job, right? So I'm looking at that and saying, well, good, she's working. But if she's had the job for a month and she was applying for a house and she's trying to move into a new rental property, that's a lot of moving pieces. Those are a lot of big life transitions happening all at the same time. I'm looking at that saying, well, there's too much going on. What I'm looking for, the type of tenants for houses, is I want really stable tenants. People that, they might have had something happen in their life, but they show a job history of years. They show past tenant history of years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff I want to see. She didn't have a very long history with the last tenant either. And so my assistant had called the landlord, past landlord, and they had raving reviews. Well, we have to be a little bit careful of that because a past landlord can give raving reviews because they want the tenant out. Is that the case? I have no idea. Probably not, but it's possible. So we just kind of have to weigh that out a little bit. So again, once I realized that, she'd only been in her job for a month, to me, that's too risky. Here's why, is she's still in probation time frame with that job. So in another 60 days, they may not keep her. And guess what? Now she's a tenant of mine with no job. She has her cleaning business, but that's not, when we're looking as an entrepreneur, I'm like, fantastic. She's got a business, she's out hustling, she's doing things to bring in extra income. But as a landlord, I look for stability. I love to see stuff like really good, strong, good paying, long history jobs. I love that kind of stuff as a landlord. Not so much as an entrepreneur, but as a landlord. So again, she'd only been there for a month. Credit score wasn't great, pretty high student loans. So on the surface, she came across as professional, had her life together, has a job, had people saying good things about her. But as we look a little bit deeper, we say, okay, there's some things going on. So a little bit of instability, lots of moving pieces going on in her life right now. Something's going, right? Something's going on. There's changes, there's transitions. We as a landlord we want to be affected by that as little as possible. We don't want tenants that have tons of changes going on in our life. We want very stable people that are going to stay put, and they're going to stay there for a long time. When we looked at past landlords and stuff, my sister made this comment the other day. She's like, it seems like most people don't even do credit or do history checks. I said, most people don't. I said, because most people are, most landlords, it's why they're burned out landlords, is because they don't do this. They don't look into the stuff. They don't read the story. They don't do the background check. They don't do the credit check. They don't call past references. They're simply just looking to get the bills paid. And so, being that they probably have a mortgage that's going to need paid next month, they're wanting to get it filled as quickly as possible. So the first person that applies, if they have enough income, they lease it, right? Whereas we do a little bit different. In fact, I told my assistant, I was like, I don't care if the property sits for 2 to 3 months. We will let it sit until we find the right person. When we find the right person, we'll know. One, it's going to tell a perfect story. 2, instinct will tell us. Okay, so we have to look at both those things. But again, I'm just going to reiterate that when we're looking at the application, we're looking at the story that application is telling us. We're looking at, how the person is presenting themselves. Are they prompt? Do they show up on time? Do they greet well? Do they shake her hand? Do they take their shoes off at the front door? Or do they let their kids run in and run all over the house? Or are the kids very well behaved? How old are their kids? How many dogs do they have? What size of dogs? So all of those things matter, right? Every single piece matters. So it's one reason, so I feel like we do a very good job of tenant screening, and it's why in years now, we basically never have a vacancy. If we do have a vacancy, it's filled for the most part before the other people move out. We have 0% paying late. We have 0% evictions, literally 0. So it's an almost unheard of, occupancy, paying on time, no evictions, that kind of thing, unheard of. But it's because we put this time into it. So it's one thing my mentor taught me. He said, Mark, when you're renting nice houses, you can't just fill it with anybody. You have to be very particular, very careful with who you rent those houses to, so that they take good care of them, and so they treat them like they would their own. In fact, one of the things he always talked about was, you want people that did have a home. Ideally, you want a person that has experienced home ownership, that understands how to take care of a house, understands, the ins and outs, changing the furnace filter, basic plumbing leaks, all that kind of stuff. You want somebody that's experienced that, knows how to handle a house. You don't want somebody that you're renting to that knows nothing about home ownership, that's never had any of those responsibilities, and you're just renting it out to try to pay the mortgage. That's not what we want. So be very careful, and by all means, read the story. Read it deep, and the more you try to pull that story out of that application, the better management you're gonna have. Be sure, if you haven't yet, find me on Mark Lane Education, or at Mark Lane Education on Facebook or on Instagram, and I will see you guys next week on the next video.